I'd imagine the more that they feel like their room is cool and that they had a hand in like making choices about it.
It's theirs. Yeah.
It's fucking theirs. Yeah. I remember senior year of college was the first time I was like a pretty neat person. And it was because I painted one wall a color that I liked.
Yeah.
To get girls mostly.
Nice.
I just wanted to show them I was a grown up. I was a senior in college. I really have my shit together.
Yeah. You know how to paint a wall. It's
a marriage material, baby.
Okay, so let's record the intro now.
So what did Milkless? Because I think we start with the name.
Two dads, we love our kids, but then we also need them to know that we're like pretty cool and it's not like a wimpy podcast. So, hey, hey, Milkless.
Hey, welcome. Hey,
Milkless. Call the audience, Milkless. What's up, Milkless? Max coming at you.
What if that's it? That's our first take. On this episode of the podcast, we got our first two-parter. We wanted to talk about chores, which is something Max and I are both figuring out with our kids. Maybe late to the game. I don't know. We'll get into it. But that often gets associated with things like allowance and money. We tried to make it one episode, but it got too long, so we turned it into two. First episode, we'll be talking mostly about chores. Second episode, we'll get into the dollars. Do you pay for the chores? How do you handle that? Check it out.
All right, Matt, today we are talking about chores, allowance, kids pulling their own weight in the house, earning your keep. Now, this one's going to be an interesting one because I think that there is large consensus among the child psychology community.
Oh, they figured it out?
Yeah, it's done. It's just a matter of implementation.
Yeah, it's good because we haven't really started this. I mean, that's not true. There's certain things we expect our daughter to do, but like we don't have like a formal chores policy. And I think it's about time.
Yeah. And we're going to get into it where there's formal chores like, walking the dog or dishwasher or something like that. But then there's also just like cleaning up after yourself, cleaning your room, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where you're not always kind of walking around, picking up after your kids.
Yeah.
It's just, there's nothing more fraught. So basic consensus is like, look, it's just really, really, really good for child development if kids have chores. It's going to be good for their working memory, flexible thinking, self-control, self-regulation, what type of adult they are. And it makes sense.
Yeah.
You understand responsibility through your life.
It also, I just think like on some fundamental level, every person when they're a part of a group can fight laziness at times. Cause it's like, I could just let the other people, but you ultimately feel bad. Like when you played sports, there'd be times if you were tired, if you'd loaf a little bit, but you'd always feel like shit afterwards. You always felt the best when you really felt like you were part of the team.
100%. And that's like learning how to do the hard things and then have that positive feedback loop where you feel good about yourself, positive thinking, giving into those sort of negative, for lack of a better term, lazy thoughts are not good for mental health.
Yeah. And I feel like everyone's got them. I feel like even the most hiding and the most productive people is a guy that would just watch 11 hours of Netflix and eat everything he could find.
Yeah. It doesn't feel good.
No, I don't like that guy.
To be a lout.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to try to get into today is like, okay, it's pretty clear that chores and pulling your weight and pitching into the family is good for child development. It's good for our kids. How do we get them to do it?
Yeah, there's that.
The other part that we're going to talk about is also just allowances and what the guidance is on that. There's large consensus that allowance is also very, very good for teaching kids about money, even at a young age. And the guidance is basically as soon as the kids start understanding money and talking about money, there should be some sort of allowance. And the allowance can be 25 cents a week. I mean, it doesn't have to, it can be whatever works in your budget, but having something where they start to understand the value of money. And the interesting thing, and it's pretty much across the board, is it is not advisable to link chores to money.
I'm curious, do they put specific ages either to those kind of formalized chores or like picking up after themselves, which I think is kind of a different thing, or the money side of it? What ages are they talking about? Or is it there's no such thing as too young?
There's no such thing as too young. As soon as they can do it, they should be doing something. And the thing that's so hard is as a tired kind of overworked parent, a lot of this is just more work on the parent's part.
Yeah.
Especially with young kids. They're not going to actually set the table correctly. I mean, and then you got to worry about them stabbing themselves with a knife. And,
yeah. Our 15, almost 16-month-old is old enough that she's like walking around real independent, but she really wants to have a job, but she's useless at it. So her job is like taking something out of a drawer and putting it in another drawer where you don't find it for 4 months. And like, it's a bitch because as soon as they get helpful at them, they stop wanting to do them.
Yeah.
She'll just like sweep dirt into the house.
Yeah.
And I'm like, thanks, baby. And meanwhile, my 6-year-old is like, why don't you?
Yeah. Well, I think also I think if you keep that going with the baby all the way through, then it'll work. I don't know. I have no history doing that. So I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
Both of my kids helped me unload the dishwasher when they were like toddlers. They liked it and they could be helpful with it if I could go fast enough to keep them from breaking stuff. And that was our first chore, but it was kind of fun for them. And as soon as, like, obviously at 15 months old, when she's just like wanders away, you're not going to be like, get back here and finish the fucking dishwasher.
I know, because then that's where it turns into something that doesn't feel what you want it to feel like. So if you can keep it fun, and some of the guidance online was like, talk about like, oh, who can put away the blue things from the grocery store with me? And it's like, so then it turns, you kind of gamify it for younger kids.
Yeah.
My wife is actually really good at this since the kids have been very little. We have a big stool. And we don't have this one, but have you seen that stool that is almost like has a back around it?
We got that shit.
That's great. You put it right up against the counter.
Yeah.
I mean, they'd have to really try to do a backflip off that thing to injure themselves.
Our daughter actually did. She was jumping on it one time and she just went right through the steps. She just snapped it in half like a judo chop.
Ooh.
But she just landed on the ground and was totally uninjured. And then my dad and I fixed it.
You reinforced that shit.
And now I like it more because I feel like it's mine.
There you go. But like, that's important, is you get the kid starting to like, I like cooking. I cook with mommy or daddy. And again, it makes things take longer.
Yeah.
But then they're kind of included, and that can be a fun experience with your kid. It's not just like, okay, you go do something, watch TV or play by yourself while I cook.
Yeah.
And then they start to kind of learn about maybe pitching in with the family, and you start talking about a lot of that. Like, this is what we do in this family. We all help out. We got to keep the wheels turning.
If you don't think of it as actually trying to get something done, if you think of the act of doing the chores kind of for its own sake, then you're like flexing that muscle, but there's no pressure on it to go well or be fast or actually help. Yeah.
That's just laying the foundation of, hey, let's help each other. And that's a good foundation to lay. But then I think we got to have the next phase. And it was something in the middle that is just so fraught, is just picking up after yourself. Do you have this problem? I mean, if we're not watching, we'll have 4 half-done 100-piece puzzles along the floor, on the table. Then there's a half-played board game. And it's incredible what they're able to do in such a short period of time.
You can make a mess so fast.
If I'm playing with them, I can get them to clean up after themselves as we move from puzzle A to puzzle B. And so we're slowly teaching that. But I could count on one hand the amount of times that they've cleaned up on their own as they move from thing 1 to thing 2.
Sometimes we do let's clean this up before we open up the next can of worms. But there's also been other times where maybe I just came home at the end of the day and there was stuff that I knew that she had been playing with. That almost didn't matter as much as long as I was cleaning up with her, she was pretty willing to do it. Mm-hmm. The battles are when I'm like, just go do it. But I have started to even be able to say like, hey, I got all these dishes to do. Could you clean this up while I do these dishes? Yeah. And as long as we're like in the same room and she can see my work, I guess, then she's all right.
I think that's a good rule. Maybe a loose rule that we can come up with together is like, if it's one board game or one puzzle, go clean that up before we go play outside together.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
If it's World War III and they really,
fuck shit up,
fuck shit up, then it's like, we'll just do that together. Yeah. And then next time, let's try to, it's a work in progress here. I mean, come on.
Yeah. I still don't feel like, I don't feel like my oldest daughter is like capable of not making a mess left to her own devices. She's just still too chaotic a human. Yeah. Like, she's 6. Oh man, she did one time. She was drying herself off after she got out of the tub, and she just took her towel and held it up in front of me. And with like a shit-eating grin on her face, trying to be funny and make a joke, she just dropped it on the ground and walked off. And I was just like, baby, that will never be funny. I clean up after you so much. Yeah. I cannot find that as funny.
Oh, that one didn't land?
That one didn't land. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, wrong crowd, baby.
Well, I think that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, our oldest is 8.5. I mean, it's just years and years of repetition of like, when they take off their clothes, just dropping it on the floor.
Yeah.
But I think it eventually, with enough coaching, it's just the hard part is to do it. I think to do it right and to like not like snap at your kids or create an authoritarian situation. It's just a lot of mind numbing. Hey, do you see how you threw your clothes on the floor? Like, what are we thinking about that? Like, constant like slow reminders.
So I may be like splitting hairs here, but I do think that like when I feel like I do it right, I just expect her to clean up something if I find it. And when I do it wrong, I guilt her a little bit for having been messy in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
It's the difference between like you find her pajamas on the floor and you're like, why are these here? Like, why would you just leave these here? Versus just like, hey babe, come get your pajamas and take them to the...
Yeah.
And like, as long as she comes and does that, it's like, you haven't done anything wrong. I just watch my daughter move through the world and how quickly her attention moves from one thing to the next and how quickly her attention disappears from what just happened. And I just feel like asking her to remember to get her clothes to the hamper every time. Did I say pantry earlier? I have a hamper pantry problem. I have to say the wrong one first always.
I do green and orange. I honestly don't know which one I said. They're interchangeable in my mind.
Wow.
I have no idea which one's which.
Yeah.
Unless I slow down and think.
Yes. And usually I have to say the wrong one first. I get my clothes out of the pantry. Yeah, I just feel like when I'm like not doing good, sometimes I give her shit about having been messy in the first place. And it's like, she's going to be messy as long as she cleans it up later.
Well, when I get into bed, I leave my jeans on the floor.
Yeah.
That's what I do. So it's like, I'm a total hypocrite.
But then you clean them up the next morning.
Sometimes.
Well, here's a fun question. Are you a messy person? Would you consider yourself a messy person?
I mean, you saw me in college. Did you not? Did you ever enter one of my dorm rooms?
I just thought maybe, Maxie, baby, you grew up a little bit, big guy.
Oh, I did. But that's largely because of my wife. Like, I think that's what you do in a partnership. Sometimes it's opposites attract. My wife is very neat and I aspired to be like her.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, I'd say a quite neat person.
Yeah.
But I'll still get like a pile over a chair somewhere that has like 4 or 5 articles of clothing, 6 or 7 articles of clothing. And then it's like, wow, that's a big pile.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't even imagine staying up late, like 1 a.m, like taking off my jeans that still have another wear in them, folding them up, taking the belt out, rolling the belt up, putting the belt in. I mean, I've never done that in my life.
No, yeah. But you just do it the next morning though. I mean, there's different styles, I guess. There's like dumb games that you'll see on YouTube where they ask 2 people to point to like, which one's the most likely to end up in jail?
Oh yeah.
If my wife and I played that game and they said, which one of you is the neater person? We would both point to ourselves. And I'm not sure who's right. I think it's maybe we prioritize different things.
Well, that's a great situation.
And still, we cannot compete with one 15-month-old. Our house is a fucking wreck.
But that's just what you do. And one word to the wise on that, because my wife is the neat one. I remember she was literally like the maid in the Jetsons, like following the child around, like constantly cleaning up, like a full house cleanup 3 times a day, 4 times a day. And it's like, babe, you're really burning yourself out here. Let's just do it once at the end of the night.
I'm a little bit that way, though. I like follow the kids around, clean it up. It calms me.
But have you ever put away the same set of toys more than once in a day?
Yeah, it's hard. Well, and now it's like whenever I go to put something away, my 15-month-old is like, that's an interesting bin. I'd like to take some things out of there.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck. So basically I have to wait till she's asleep.
Yeah. So do it once.
Anyways, it's just it's a phase.
Yeah. So that's cleaning up after yourself. Cleaning your room. Now, we may have a neat 8-year-old, but since he got his own room, his room's really clean. I don't know if he's neat or if that's just like there's hope at the end of the tunnel there for the neatness.
Some of it's got to be temperament, right? Like if I had to guess, just based on the time spent with you and your kids, I bet your middle kid is not that way.
No.
I bet your middle kid's got a little more of the maxi mess in him.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what occurred to me as you were saying that? I feel like my oldest daughter, I think, we've had a million different sleeping arrangements since they were born. Right now I sleep with her and my wife sleeps with the baby, but they're going to move in together as soon as the baby's kind of ready for it. Mm-hmm. And my daughter's going to get a bunk bed. She's super psyched about it. She's like talking it up. And I'd imagine the more that they feel like their room is cool and that they had a hand in like making choices about it, the more likely
theirs.
It's fucking
like,
theirs.
This is I can put a poster, or your daughter can put a cheetah poster up.
Yeah. I remember senior year of college was the first time I was like really a pretty neat person. And it was because I painted one wall a color that I liked.
Yeah.
To get girls mostly. I was like, oh, this is my room.
Nice.
So yeah, giving him some ownership over it. Probably. I just wanted to show him I was a grown up. I was a senior in college. I really had my shit together.
Yeah. You know how to tape a wall and paint a wall. It's
a marriage material, baby.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted. Anyways, here's one question I had. Like, how are you going to think about like more formalized chores? Like, are you going to like make a checklist? Are you thinking?
I don't know. Like, we've looked into the checklists and stuff like that. Just one quick side study, because I think it's interesting. There's a study by there was a peer-reviewed study by Australian Occupational Therapy Journal, and basically they broke chores into 3 categories: one of self-care, then like for making your own meals, cleaning your own room; other care, making meals for other people, doing things for the family; and then pet care. And what was interesting is the first 2, self-care and other care, had a huge impact on executive function, which is working memory, flexible thinking, and self-control. Pet care did not.
Fuck, that was the one we did most.
Yeah, well, there are other ones. And what a lot of the guidance said is like, find ones that people enjoy and have the skills to do. So it's not dissimilar from what we talked about on the spousal scorekeeping episode, where, let's divide and conquer. What are you good at? What do you like? What doesn't bum you out that much? Our kids right now set the table. Not every night. We could probably formalize that more. But a lot of times if we just ask them, hey, can you guys set the table? They will. And I think that the general guidance is, you don't want it to be too militant, but it's more about, hey, guys, like, we got to like run this family. We got to like run this house. It's another exercise in empathy. Here's how it all works. Thing I always say, like, I'm just like a guy. I was like an 8-year-old kid, like 2 seconds ago. Who wants to give me a hand? Like, how are we going to do this thing? And then you do chores that way. I'm thinking we might actually slip in allowance there at the same time, but say that they are completely unrelated, because all the guidance says they should be unrelated. You don't want to be holding it over them where it's like, better empty the dishwasher. You're not getting your allowance this week. Yeah. Which I think I grew up with that. And I think that's very normal. So if you're doing that, don't worry about it. Like, I think probably most people do that.
But it does, what you do by paying them for it, you take away the part of it that's like, hey, be a part of this team. They're fucking mercenaries at that point, man. They're Kevin Durant. They're playing for their 6th team, just going to the next big paycheck,
Exactly. And then they don't learn the things that we would hope that they would learn. It's more like, let's pitch in. And then it's not a wage. Allowance is more like profit sharing in this family. Like, you're going to get $5 a week or whatever it is. And actually, I signed up for that thing that we talked about on the gifts episode.
Oh, dope.
The green light credit cards.
Are you sure it's not orange light?
I don't know what that is. Is that a sexual thing?
I didn't think you could tell the difference between green and orange.
Oh. For some reason, green light, I would never say orange light, but I'm telling you, if you ask me, see those colors and tell me which one it is, if you ask me to just answer really fast, I'm wrong more than I'm right.
That's so weird. Hamper pantry. I didn't like, just something went wrong somewhere and I can't fix it.
It's very similar. The words are similar. You're probably putting them in the same category in your brain. For me, it's GR, I think, green and orange.
Oh, interesting.
I think they're in the same category in my brain.
I think of them as so different from each other. They're like on opposite ends of the color wheel.
But the word.
Well, that's the problem. When you say green, the thing that flashed in my mind is the color, not the like written word. You're adding another step.
Yeah, but I think that when my computer wrote to the hard drive, it put them way too close to each other.
Yeah. And like those neural pathways just like merged by accident.
They're right next to each other. I definitely learned those colors on the same day.
Do you think people want to listen to us talk about this?
No. Please cut.
All right.
I guess just to, one thing you had asked a minute ago was about the checklists. And, we've had like star charts in the past before, and they do this thing at their school called like a dojo chart, where they get these little check marks, or every time the whole class does something good, they'll go around and check the thing. And at every 10 check marks, they get like a pencil. At the 20 mark, they get like a little toy out of a bag. That's kind of interesting. you know it like works because the kids are obsessed with it.
Yeah.
The question is it achieving what we're really going for? I don't really know.
Is the goal the behavior or the goal that they're like getting something out of it? That they're like developing an internal sense of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because kids do take pride in helping out. Like, think about it. Like,
Yeah.
they have like the teacher's helper or like the
Yeah.
class leader.
Yeah.
Kids would literally do anything for that.
That was a cherished position. Shout out to the Montessori. They have something called community jobs. There's plants that need watering. There's a pet that needs to be fed, which I know is useless, but there's like cleanup to be done. One kid like cuts up cucumber slices with a safe knife, and then like another kid hands them out to everybody, and they rotate that stuff around, which is a long way of saying school should be helping with this.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like a valuable thing in a school if they're doing a good job of this.
Right. So it's like, I think there's ways to get there. What I don't want to get into is like an argumentative situation with the kids. Like, okay, you signed up for dishwasher. You can't do this until dishwasher. Like, maybe that is the right thing to do.
It doesn't sound like the right way for it to be going. Because again, if it's like, ultimately, I feel like the ultimate goal is to get them to internalize the desire to be helpful.
And that we're on a team together.
Yeah. And so if like if you're having a shout at him about it, and dude, I've definitely been there. I mean, I never intend to be there, but sometimes just the circumstances are wrong. And my 6-year-old just like rejects helping with something that she could clearly help with and that I really need her help with. And it's hard to not like, well, you want to do my day? You wanted to have the day I just had? They tell me that,
Yeah. Well, maybe is the thing, do you kind of withhold you playing with them in a way? Now, hear me out. So let's say they want to play something, but I really need to do this one chore. Like we really need to empty the dishwasher or something. What if I say like, yeah, let's play. But like, why don't we do the dishwasher together?
Mm-hmm.
Then I'll play with you. Now the question is, what if they say, oh no, I'll just wait. You go ahead.
Yeah.
You go ahead and do that, Dad.
Oh man, that reminds me of one of my all-time favorite stories. It was this friend of ours, and her daughter was like, Mom, give me a cookie. And she was like, can you say please? And she goes, Mom, get me a cookie. And she goes, baby, can you ask nicely and say please? And she's like 3, and she goes, I'll just get it myself.
So good.
But that's kind of a fine outcome. It's like, all right, that's okay.
Well, so then like how would you, let's say you had a task that you wanted your daughter to do and you wanted it to be somewhat regular. Like, how are you going to get that done?
Yeah.
Like, are there any like chores that she does yet?
Yeah. Feeding the dog. Although I just learned that that's useless. But there were like, we try to grow some plants, and it would be her job to keep the plants watered, which felt like a good one. Cause it's like, if you fuck it up, you feel it because there's a brown little dead thing that you killed.
Yeah.
And so there's some stick with itness to that. I don't think we've ever been consistent enough. And part of the problem is that like, I forget about watering the plants.
Yeah.
And then who's like, I got to remember too. I'm trying to think if there's others. I mean, she gets herself dressed. Obviously she's expected to put her clothes back in the hamper.
The pantry. The pantry.
You're an
you put
asshole.
Your clothes in the pantry.
No, fuck you.
Your face, you definitely thought you said it wrong.
Totally. You got me where I'm weak.
Sorry.
That's really good. Okay. So, but with the things that are about like maintaining the house, the biggest challenge has been that I feel like my kid has a pretty good instinct for when she's actually being helpful versus when I've given her a bullshit job.
Mm-hmm.
And she won't do the bullshit jobs, but it's hard to find things where she can actually like I remember one time we got this bed and we needed to put the bed together, and all of the pieces were big enough, and she got to hammer some, and she built that whole bed.
Yeah.
Cause she could do it. And she still like, when we get on that bed, she's like, this is the one that I made. And it's because she could actually help. But we were staining her fort this last weekend, and she was like, can I come stain it? And I'm like, only if you never want to be clean again or wear those clothes again and don't mind having a poorly stained fort.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, how do you find the thing that where they really can know that they're actually helping? Like, what are those things?
Yeah. Well, there's some guidance for different ones for different ages. Toddlers, we hit pretty much all of them, like putting away their toys, closing the hamper. Then as they get older, they can put their groceries away, making their beds. Like, I mean, to be fair, like I only make my bed I'd say 40% of the time.
Yeah.
But that is a really good thing to do. There's a lot of studies that say like making your bed, like it snowballs because you get one win in the day.
I agree with that.
Clearing the table after dinner, that's something we've started doing. And I'm seeing it now. It's like, okay, if you have dessert, well, you can't have dessert until you take your plate.
We talked about this in an episode way back, that it's important that the consequences always kind of logically follow from what's happened.
Like your thing is like, we took too long eating dinner, so you can't have your stories. Like that makes sense.
Yeah. And the way we often phrase it is like, this has to happen before this.
Yeah.
But there's this assumption that like, it's going to happen and the fun stuff can't happen until the things that need to happen.
Yeah. And I think it's just sitting down with your partner and figuring out like, what are the things that you think your kids can do at their age? And then just making it the thing. Like, I think what we can do is they set the table sometimes when we ask, but I think we should just make that the thing.
And it's not like you need like 11 things.
Yeah.
I do feel like if you can find 2 or 3 things that they can be helpful with, and then they just generally clean up after themselves with your help.
Right. It really is. It's one of those things. We have to have the patience, time, and energy, especially while they're young, to get all this stuff right. I mean, there was a study in 2014. Children's relationship with chores, very hard to change after 3rd grade. So that would be like 8 or 9 years old. If the kids have never helped out a thing, you're picking up their dishes for them, picking up their room for them every day. That's really hard to change, like as they hit 10 and older.
Yeah.
That's when a lot of strife happens. Whereas if it's a kind of a culture where let's do this together, it's a pain in the fucking ass. But have you ever seen a kid at somebody's house? Maybe you don't, because you don't know older kids, where like a parent's like, hey, can you clean up your plate? And they're like, no. And they just walk away. It's too late for that kid.
God, you've seen that?
Yeah.
It's funny. I don't think of myself as strict, but I'm like, dude, if that ever happens, there's going to be such a big problem.
Well, no, because what happens is if you're not sort of working through it through younger childhood.
Yeah.
Because, when they get older, if they're not on that thread yet, they're going to be like,
yeah,
what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
I've never done that in my entire life. You've been picking up for me since I was born. Literally get fucked.
God, it goes back to this so often. And this is something that I really feel like it's cool that this is kind of like what my wife does professionally, because I feel like I've gotten to just learn some of the academic side.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching this presentation by this guy named Bruce Perry, who's like a neurobiologist, because I'm a nerd.
Yeah.
And he showed this graph that was fucking interesting. The x-axis was age, and it was one line was how much we spend on programs as a country to help kids' brains develop, like Head Start type programs, like all those kind of things.
Yeah.
And that's basically line starts very low and just goes almost straight up until they get about 16, 17 and level off. And the other line was human brain's capacity to change itself, just like in terms of forming pathways and new neurons. And it's the highest when you're born, and it's a straight line down. He was saying sometimes even in utero, you can be forming like 200,000-300,000 new neurons in a day.
Yeah.
And he's like in his 60s. He's like, on a good day, I make 200.
Yeah.
The brain's ability to learn shit and to internalize shit when they're young is so profound. And it just gets harder and harder and harder, I think.
And what I'm going to do starting tomorrow with my partners, we're going to do setting the table.
Yeah, it's good.
But I think you can also clear the whole table. It's like, look, we cooked the whole fucking thing. And then that's just like your guys' new job. Because once it becomes your job, and if they forget it, it's like, hey guys, what do we get it? Oh, okay, thanks guys.
Yeah.
And then even the 3-year-old does it now because it's normal.
That's the thing. If it's normal, then it's normal. Those things that are just like, yeah, in this house, this is what happens.
Right. And then it's like not a huge deal.
All right, so that was part 1 of what is ultimately going to be a 2-part episode. The next episode focuses not just on, how you think about, do you compensate for chores, things like that, but also kind of more broadly helping your kid form a healthy relationship with money. Back next week.